Don't you get sick of pointless arguments? Feeling like the other person, whether it's your partner or your parents, doesn't understand you and maybe doesn't even attempt to try to understand you. And the workplace frustrations where you seem to be the hardest worker in your team and your other team members just can't seem to get to speed no matter what you say to them. Just think, do you have anyone in your life where you feel that it's exhausting to communicate with? Your relative, your parent, your partner, your colleague, or your friend? Well, if you want to salvage your relationships and build happier ones in your life, listen on. Relationships that slowly fall apart do so due to the following reasons. Number one, lack of communication leading up to built-up resentment. Little things may come and go and annoy you, like they said that they'll wash the dishes while you cook, but they didn't. And this is the third time that it happened. Instead of bringing it up to a conversation, you simply rush it away because you're too tired after work and you don't have the energy to do anything apart from sit on the couch and Netflix. So you hurl the complaints silently in your head. Tell me if this happens to you before. You hurl the complaints silently in your head and it builds up. You make your own conclusions thinking that they are irresponsible, they don't care about you, instead of finding out the real reason why in conversation. Your partner senses a slight shift in energy. They feel like something is off, but they're too tired to mention it. So both of you just leave things be. Over time, either one of these two things happen. Number one, resentment builds up until it explodes and it becomes angsty arguments or passive-aggressive remarks that sound like, yeah, you say you wash the dishes, right? You haven't. Walao, I'm just chilling. I'm gonna wash it later. Wait, no, I want things to be clean right away. I don't like to see a mess. I'm using my Singlish accent very strongly, but you get my point. It becomes a whole blaming game. Or number two, either party or both parties are just mentally tired of each other and they give up wanting to rationalize things with each other. They become just roommates as opposed to partners. They go from loving to simply tolerating over time. What's sad about this is that when resentment, anger, impatience, or apathy build up, either party or both parties aren't open to have conversations anymore. Instead of sharing their feelings and caring to understand the other party's point of view, they're hurling conclusive and labeling statements at each other. For example, saying, you're always home late and you never help out around the house. Versus, hey, you have been home late for the past few weeks, leaving me at home to do most of the chores, and I'm feeling really neglected and not supported here. Can we discuss a way to move forward so that both of us can feel supported? You can see the obvious energy shift in the first and the second response. You know why this happens? Because instead of communicating your feelings, when you feel that little frustration, you decide to have this imaginary conversation in your head, making conclusions in your head. And it's our human nature to want to avoid pain and discomfort. And frankly, it's easier to have the imaginary conversation in our mind and make up our partner's responses than actually have that conversation. And so the first reason why relationships fall apart is the lack of conversation, the lack of communication, leading up to the build-up of resentment. The second reason why relationships slowly fall apart is expecting others to act according to your values and priorities. Now, each and every one of us has different values and priorities. We think, act, and make decisions based on those values. Someone who values career progression may look at someone who travels around the world as lazy or delusional, not knowing that they are simply acting in accordance to their values of maybe freedom and experiences. Someone who values prestige and position may look at someone who turned down a promotion as stupid, not knowing that they're simply acting in accordance to their values of time and family. Speaker, author, and polymath Dr. John DeMartini says that expecting someone to live outside of their highest values is futile and will lead you to frustration, which is the source of many of your relationship conflicts. Many relationships fall apart because instead of trying to learn your partner's highest values with curiosity and patience, we tend to expect them to live according to our highest values. To us, it doesn't make sense that they don't do so, and of course it doesn't, because all along our reality and our preferences are different. Or perhaps you are the one that has been subconsciously living in accordance to your partner's values. Every day after work, you follow your partner to a bar and hang out, and it's fun. But over time, it gets unfulfilling, and you don't know why. But maybe it's because one of your highest values is personal growth, and it is learning. And you need to spend some time a week to read, listen to podcasts, or be in accountability groups for personal growth. Then you need to honor that, and you need to be aware of that and communicate it with your partner. We see this in the workplace as well. The boss works overtime each day, and their employees feel that they can't leave the office, and they start being resentful over time, complaining about their boss behind the boss's back. The boss could really just be passionate about the work that he does, or he values career progression more than his personal time. Whereas the employees could, well, obviously every employee has different values, but maybe the employees value family more, or their side hustle more, or their gym time more. When there's a mismatch in values and it isn't communicated about, relationships break down over time. Even if we aren't consciously aware of what our highest values are, we will either act in accordance to it naturally or be resentful if we don't. Living in accordance to anyone's values except your own, or expecting others to act in accordance to your values and priorities, is a sure way for the relationship to fall apart. And that's why the second reason why many relationships slowly break down is that we expect others to act in accordance to our values and our priorities. The third reason why relationships slowly fall apart is that people tend to have the individual mentality versus the team mentality. What is individual mentality? It means I deal with my thing, you deal with your thing. That's the kind of mentality it is. For example, a couple decides that one of them will cook and the other cleans. And one day, the person that was supposed to clean is going through a really, really tough work day. They've had a huge project for this season and it's coming to the due date, and they're visibly stressed out about it. Individual mentality looks like this. The person who cooks sees the distress on their partner's face, but still lets them spend the time to clean because that was the agreement. The person that was tasked to clean may really need their partner to support them by bearing the load of cleaning and even giving them some words of affirmation. But instead, they don't share their need. They just grunt through the cleaning process. Team mentality looks like this. When they see the distress on their partner's face, they say, "Hey babe, don't worry about it, I'll clean up. Just focus on your work, okay? Let me know if you need anything." It's a lot of give and take, patience and appreciation, because we're all on the same team. That is the team mentality. And this can be applied in the workplace as well. A culture with individual mentality would mean that each person really only thinks about the work they need to do. And they don't really care if others are a bit slow or, they're falling behind. Because as long as I do my part, I'm done. They don't really want to do any additional work. A culture with team mentality is when there's mutual respect and support. I'm done with my part, but I'll help you with yours. But you also help me in future. There's no slacking. There is no worry that someone is just going to be a leech off you. People have mutual respect, knowing that they're going to support each other and nobody's taking advantage of each other. It's a very supportive culture. Individual mentality versus team mentality can also be seen in how our tough conversations occur. Individual mentality produces a lot of unconstructive communication involving blame, accusation, passive aggressiveness, or maybe pure aggressiveness. Each party just wants to defend themselves. It could go something like this. "You said you're gonna cook for me tonight. You better do it. You never appreciate all I do. Better do something this week. You better fix it because you said you'll fix it." This is very individual mentality. It's very accusatory. It's very, "Hey, I'm not gonna try to understand you. I just want you to do what you said." There's no curiosity. There's no willingness to understand. Team mentality produces constructive conversation, where the couple or work partners are fighting for a common cause. They're fighting for the team. They're communicating to explore a solution together. The main goal of each person is not to defend themselves and shirk off responsibility, but rather come up with a solution together so that both parties are happy. So it could look like this. "Hey, I noticed that you mentioned you're going to cook tonight. However, you ended up not doing so. May I understand why?" You see, the tone of voice and the curious question already invites a more constructive and kind conversation. It's, "Hey, I'm inviting you to have a conversation with me. I want to know what's up." Versus, "I told you to do this. You said you'd do this. Why aren't you doing it?" Aggressive tone, the team mentality wants a more kind, a more loving tone. So in any relationship that you want to nurture, Aim to foster a team mentality through everyday conversations and actions, as opposed to an individual mentality. So how can we build happier relationships? These are 3 key habits that you can do. So habit number 1 is to grow your self-awareness. Habit number 2 is to communicate your needs. Don't assume that the person, that your partner, that your colleague knows your needs. And the third habit is consistently connect with your emotions and regulate it. I'm going to start with key habit number 1 and 2 for building happier relationships because they come hand in hand. And they are grow your self-awareness and communicate your needs to your partner. What do you grow your self-awareness on? A, your values and priorities in this phase of your life. What do you naturally spend the most time, energy, and mind space on? What are the areas of your life that are non-negotiable for you to spend time and energy on? Well, if you want to focus most of your time and energy on growth and progression in your career, but your partner values relationship and family, and quality time is their way of expressing that, then you need this to be communicated between you two to find some sort of middle ground. Otherwise, it's going to lead to arguments because one person is going to be wanting to spend more time when the other person is focused on their work and their career. So how do you resolve that? You need to communicate your values and your priorities by first knowing what your values and priorities are so that you can communicate it with your partner. B, you want to gain self-awareness on what your needs are in a relationship, a friendship, or a business partnership. This has to do with any relationship. You need to know what your needs are. If you require your partner to message you every time they're coming back later than 10 p.m. to feel more assured, let them know. It is your need, and there's no need to be embarrassed about it. In a friendship, if you're not very good at following up with friends, even though you want to, and you'd like your friend to check in with you every 2 weeks to book a meetup, request it, be honest, and you guys will figure something out. This applies in working relationships as well. You need to understand what your needs are in a partnership or working relationship between you and your colleagues, you and your team, you and your manager. If you're someone that likes to get things done at least a week in advance, but your team member, your colleague is the kind of person that tends to get things done a day before the deadline, which I guess is not wrong, and it makes you feel anxious because of that, then you need to communicate your needs and understand their working style and see how you can come to a middle ground. Because otherwise, this is going to cause a lot of resentment and anger. C, you want to gain awareness on your fears in a relationship. If you are in the midst of healing from fears of your past partners cheating on you, for example, share this with your partner and discuss what are ways that they can assure you. Maybe it's sending a photo of where they are or who they're with. If your fears are that you're currently in the starting phase of building a business and you're tight on funds, be honest with your partner. You don't need to hide and pretend that you can afford expensive dates. For all you know, your partner is, like me, not very fussy about the places that you guys eat at. Personally, I can get really happy by eating at a roadside stall, and I love that because I'm more of an experienced kind of gal. So that's why it's so important to be aware of what your fears are in a relationship, whether it's fears from the past or current fears because of your situation, and consistently communicate with your partner because they won't know if you don't tell them. D, you want to get aware of what your triggers are and how your partner can support you. If you observe that you can get really unhappy when you're hungry, then let your partner know and teach them how they can respond to support you. At work, if you tend to get impatient and direct with your instructions when deadlines are coming near, let your team know. Tell them that this is your natural tendency so they won't guess and think and assume that, something's wrong and that you're mad at them when you're really not. You're just feeling unsettled that the deadline is coming near. Everyone has these unglamorous sides of them, and letting your partner know in advance allows them to better anticipate it, as opposed to get shocked and maybe even get triggered, and then that everybody is getting triggered because you're triggered and then you trigger the other person. We all need to be self-aware of what our triggers are so that we can communicate with our partners and verbalize, request support from our partners. Tell them in advance, this is how you support me when I'm feeling anxious, when I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling fearful. This is how you can reassure me. E, you want to get clear on your communication style. When you receive feedback, do you prefer it to be straightforward and to the point or more cushioned? The way you speak, is it straight to the point or expressive? The way you text, is it straightforward with no emojis or very expressive with lots of emojis? Realize that people don't communicate the same way as you do. And just because your text doesn't have lots of emojis, it doesn't mean that they don't love you. There's so many times that I think that someone hates me when it's just because they don't use emojis and they use a lot of full stops. And that's just how they text. And that's not how I text. So it's so important to know what your communication style is and what your partner's communication style is. And last but not least, be self-aware of your love language. What makes you feel loved? Knowing this and having a conversation with your partner about it will prevent loads of misunderstandings. Say you tend to feel loved when your partner regularly affirms you and texts often. Then communicate it. Maybe your partner isn't really a texter, but they'll make an effort. Or maybe they'll say, hey, it's really not something I can commit to, texting, etc. I'll personally show love in other ways, like acts of service. Then you can decide if that's what you want to make peace with and then accept it. And what you can do is to get words of affirmation from other people, like your close friends and your family. See how you can seek it from other places, like communities, accountability groups, your good friends. Your love language deserves to be affirmed, but it does not have to be affirmed by your partner. It can be affirmed by other people in your life. As previously mentioned, relationships break down because of lack of communication. But we can't communicate effectively if we don't understand ourselves. So actively grow your self-awareness by keeping an on-the-go journal. So I have an on-the-go journal on my phone on Notion, and I consciously observe what goes on in my mind every single day, and I note down any thoughts and emotions that I'd like to explore. And then one day a week, I'll spend maybe 1 or 2 hours looking into this on-the-go journal, and I'll pick out the areas that I want to dive deeper into that I feel need a little bit more self-coaching and journaling. You can take note of the following things, 5 things. Number 1, you can take note of times you felt triggered or have negative thoughts that take over and hold you back and make you feel bad. Number 2, you can take note of times where you felt especially joyful and in the flow. This gives you a hint of what energizes you and what your passions and areas of fulfillment might be. And 3, you can take note of instances where you thought, I should do this, I need to do this. Because that actually gives you a hint on the areas that you're imposing other people's values on you. Because you use should and need, it means that you don't actually want to do it. Number 4, take note of instances where you thought they should do it. They need to do this. My partner should be doing this. Because when you say should and need, you are imposing your own values and beliefs on someone else. And last but not least, 5, you can be aware of what makes you feel loved and appreciated. Now, these are just 5 questions, and the list obviously is not exhaustive, but these questions will get you started on identifying your values and priorities, your needs, your fears, your triggers, your communication style, and your love language, as previously mentioned. And as you deepen your self-awareness, regularly communicate the new findings with them and get to know their new findings as well. That is how a relationship is built. With open and curious communication, you start learning the best way to love them and live with them, leading to happier relationships. Now, key habit number 3 to building happier relationships is to consistently connect with your emotions and regulate it. This is often not done because we're so busy in our lives. Most heated arguments and sudden outbursts happen when either party or both parties don't consistently acknowledge their emotions and actually speak to it. Now, consistently connecting with your emotions is so important. When you experience little triggers, acknowledge your emotions and process them. Do not ignore your emotions and brush them away because they'll only build up inside you. So here's a 2-step practice you can try when you experience a wave of uncomfortable emotions or when you get triggered. Number 1, sit still, breathe, and allow yourself to feel your feelings. Just sit in those feelings, experience them as they are, and then let them go. And number 2, once the initial emotions have settled down a little bit, get curious about your emotions. What triggered this emotion? Where did this come from? Where did it originate from? How can I create safety for myself the next time I experience this trigger so I may respond a different way? How can I seek support from my partner? Do this weekly, daily even. And the next time something is said that's triggering to you, you're able to pause, breathe, stop the fear response, and instead have a constructive conversation with yourself and with the other party. A final phrase that I'd like to give you is one that I remind myself so often. Your relationship with others can only be as deep as the relationship you have with yourself. Notice the importance of growing a relationship with yourself so you can grow deeper, more connected and happier relationships with others. Ultimately, knowing yourself well will help you decide which relationships you want to invest time, energy, and curiosity into, and which you do not. It's better to know clearly what you want and what you don't want in a partner, or what you accept and what you don't accept in an employer, so you can decide if you want to continue the relationship further than the first few meetings. That's way better than hoping and expecting someone to act a certain way, because they won't.